we are right back with more Joy in Our Tongue. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Ranville, and we have joining us today, Pastors Vernicia and Esau Waters from Tampa and Zoe International Christian Center. And our topic for discussion today will be uncovering the real enemy within the church. Thank you all for being here today.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So talk to us about what is that? What is that statement? Uncovering the real enemy within the church.
Well, with all the unrest in the nation, the rise of racial tension and violence and people being afraid and the fear is in the society, therefore it has crept into the church. And the church, is supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be aware of the enemy. And we can't allow what's happening on the outside come into the inside in the house of God. So we have to be strong. And we got to fight and identify who the real enemy is, which is Satan.
So Satan is the real enemy.
He's the real enemy.
So
Absolutely.
how am I able to take that in the spiritual context and a practical sense and walk that out from the church perspective and have that affect the community in a positive way?
Well, if you don't mind, there's a story in the book of Esther. It kind of symbolizes what's going on in our nation and in our communities today. And if you go to the third chapter in the book of Esther, Haman is exalted. He's been promoted, and everyone is bowing down to him except this one guy, which his name is Mordecai. And he gets upset because Mordecai doesn't bow down. And he realizes that Mordecai doesn't bow down because he's a Jew. And Haman makes up his mind that I'm not only going to destroy Mordecai, but I'm going to destroy the whole nation of Jews. And so that pattern is the same pattern that Satan has. When he was in Ezekiel 28, when he was in the Garden of Eden, his heart was full of pride, and he wanted everybody to bow down to him, and he wanted to be like the Most High. So we see the same pattern of he divides the nation. They say the nation is divided. Well, we shouldn't be divided in the house of God. There shouldn't be racial bias in the house of God. There shouldn't be gender discrimination in the house of God. We are different. As Haman told the king, he said, these people are different. The laws are different. So our laws are different. We have the law of love, and we should always walk in love towards our fellow man. And the love must be the primary thing in the church.
So Pastor Venetia, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of the practical things that, some of the real issues that we need to identify and talk about, as you guys have stated, and some of the practical steps that we need to take as believers in order to move forward from this state of affairs that we find ourselves in?
Well, I think some of the practical things we need to do is we need to take a look at ourselves. Some of the deep-rooted issues that are in ourselves. What do we really believe? How are we culturally divided? And so what we need to do is we need to take whatever situation that we have, begin to look at it and see, where do I fit in it? And so, like in your job, if you're placed in your job and things are going on in your job or in your community or in your home, you have to take a look at it and say, where do I really stand on that? Where do I really fit in on that? And once we begin to do that, we could take a look around us. And so what's going on in the world today is basically made up of individuals who have their own thoughts, who have their own thought patterns, whether it has come from where they were brought up or where someone had put those things inside of them. Well, when we go outside into the world, we take those deep-rooted issues inside of us and we begin to apply those. So we have to take the information that we've been taught and we have to decipher it. And we have to see, am I doing what God wants us to do? Or am I doing what I've been taught to do? And people are not doing that. So when I go to work, I work for the Department of Defense, I have to take a look at my personal stand as an individual. How do I really apply my biblical principles of what I've been taught and be kingdom-minded at all times, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm doing it in the natural or am I applying it spiritually? I must take those biblical principles and take a hold of it and apply it to my natural environments at all times.
So it sounds like we need to have a unified approach
Absolutely.
from the church to
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
community, which will affect everybody.
Everybody.
Talk to us about that approach, the unified approach that we need to take on as the body of Christ going forward, which will roll over into the community.
Well, I look at it when my husband talked about Esther. Esther, Hebrew name was Hadassah, which means myrtle, which means actually plant. I believe we've been planted in our community for such a time as this. I believe we've been planted to actually affect the kingdom by the way we are. And so I take what I've learned, I take my situational awareness, and no matter what I'm going through, no matter if it's in my community or my church, I take all those different things and I apply biblical principles to it. Whether it's diversity, whether it's culturally situated awareness, I have to make sure that what I'm doing is biblically sound. And so when Esther was planted there, I believe we are planted where we are in our community. I believe we are planted in our church. I believe we are planted in our jobs so that we can affect the kingdom, affect our communities, therefore affect our nations.
So do you believe that as a result that there is levels of fear, and we have this level of being levels of fear and being reserved as the voice? Is it because of ignorance? What do you believe is happening that is blocking this unity from coming forth within the church and then having it flow out to the community and society at large?
Well, again, it goes back to the enemy. His strategy is to conquer, divide, and conquer. So if he can divide us, united we stand, divided we fall. His strategy is to divide. We cannot allow him to divide us by race, sex, or anything. God wants us to be a place of unity. And when the world see that we're unified, they're gonna come to the church for answers. The things we are facing now in our nation, in our local communities, the political leaders, they don't necessarily have the answer. There's a spiritual dimension in everything. Behind every natural problem, there's a spiritual problem. And the church voice must be heard. And we can no longer be just a church behind the walls. We have to come out of the walls and go into the communities, in the workplace, in the political offices, and speak to our leaders and tell them there's another dimension that you need to be aware of, that the enemy is trying to destroy our homes, our families, and our communities, and our churches. And we have to be strong.
So that has to do, it sounds like you're saying we have to know exactly who we are and
Yes.
remember what is our original mandate as
Right.
the church and not be afraid to speak. Where can I start? Can I start in my church and my home and my job? With these issues that are prevalent with disunity amongst us as the body, where can someone start?
Well, they start with themselves and talk to God and say, what Esther was strategically planted in the kingdom of Ahasuerus at that time to bring deliverance. She didn't know why she became queen, but God had a plan to deliver the Jews because she was in the right place. She didn't say, well, they said, I'm in the kingdom for such a time as this. So Mordecai revealed to her, this is why you're here. And if you don't speak up at this time, deliverance won't come. So you need to speak up. And the church, we have to speak up to save our communities. We have to speak up to save our nation. We have to speak up to save our families. We cannot no longer do church as usual. When in I think it's chapter 4, when Mordecai heard, he was fasting and praying, and he was carrying such a fuss in front of the king's gate. And Esther was like, well, what's wrong with him? Why is he doing all that? He's like, and she wanted to do church as usual. But he told her, you need to hear what I'm saying, because if you don't speak up this time, you're going to be destroyed as well. And so I'm saying to us, the church, we have to speak up to save our community. We are the salt of the earth. We got to be strong in this time.
Yes, awesome. And so we're able to, so as a result of speaking up, you think that would that bring us into more of an awareness of the issues or revelation? How do we go forward? What are some of the things, or actually that one thing that you all as pastors do, that you move from the community, and we don't have a lot of time left, but you move from the church that spills over into the community that could transform after we have identified the real enemy, people's lives?
Well, we normally teach our people that we go from the seats to the streets. So everything that we've been taught in church, everything that God has revealed to us, we just don't have just leave it at the church. We have to go back into our communities. We have to go back where we are working every day. You know, when Jesus said, be fishers of men, he means wherever you're planted, that's where you're fishing. And so when I go back to work, I'm there. I'm there to affect that community. Wherever you are, that's where you're. So our goal is to go back to take it from the street or the seats back to the streets. That's where we have to be.
And how important is having a prayer life with all of this that is going on?
Very important. You have to have a prayer life because that is where God is going to reveal to you what you need to do. That's where you get your strategic plan on how to go back and affect your community and your nation. You have to have a prayer. You have to have a prayer life. It's very important. You must have a prayer life.
So it sounds like no prayer, no answers, no
Absolutely.
progression. So prayers is the foundation
It's
for
the
all
foundation.
that we need.
Everything else
Yes.
is built upon it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming today. Do you have any closing remarks that you want to share with our audience? And how do I, because people are sitting listening to you, and this stuff sounds really good, but practically there's some real deep-seated issues. What is that one thing that person can take away today to say, listen, I can start with this one thing and I can move out into the community?
Always check your motives in everything that you do. Check why you're doing what you're doing. Ask God, is this what I'm really supposed to do? He will reveal it to you. He
So
will.
check the motives.
Absolutely.
And so when I check my motives, as a result of my motives, what Pastor Esau, what happens when my motive is when my motives are aligned correctly?
When your motives are aligned correctly, you'll be in alignment with God. Therefore, he will give you the wisdom and the knowledge, the understanding of what to say or what to do in the situation that you're in. And it will be a blessing. Same way Esther blessed her people, she saved her people because she obeyed God and got the wisdom of God. And we need the wisdom of God. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. For whatever we do, we can't be in fear. The church can't be in fear, not at this time.
No.
So we go from identifying the real enemy
Yes.
and we are the solution to the problem.
Absolutely.
And practical and
Absolutely.
spiritual, not only spiritual strategies through prayer, but practical panacea through going out and being involved with the community.
Absolutely.
Moving from, like you said, the seats to the streets. Now
Yeah.
tell everyone where they can find you guys, where they could plug in, because I know you guys are from Zoe International.
Well, we're located at 1005 Bloomingdale, and we're in a city called Riverview, Florida. We've moved there actually since October, but we've been a part of the Tampa Bay area now for 5 years.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for being here. It was
Thank
a pleasure. You
Thank
guys
you.
have uncovered the real enemy.
Yes.
And I'm your host, Dr. Jason Renville, and you have been watching Joy in Our Tongue.